Welcome to the 19th Century Charitable Association, where it is our vision to be the dynamic cultural center for community learning. Good afternoon, I'm Susan Roberts, and I'm the Science Program Chair, and this is a science program. We have scheduled around 30 programs in this season for our enrichment series. And this is part of our mission to strengthen our community through learning, giving, and sharing our landmark building. Today's program is Lightning, Beautiful but Deadly. I am so pleased to introduce our speaker, Mary Ann Cooper. She will discuss how safety campaigns in the USA have decreased deaths by 70%, common myths and superstitions, and what is being done worldwide to reduce lightning injuries and deaths. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and thank you all for attending. I appreciate it. Okay, so I think lightning is one of the most beautiful things God has given us, along with the flowers and the breeze and the sunsets and the sunrises. But it can be deadly. This picture shows some of the survivors of a lightning strike that occurred on the 28th of June in 2011 at Runyanya Primary School in Uganda. 18 children were killed, 38 went to the hospital from one lightning strike to their classroom. So that's one of the things that I'm doing now, and I hope this program will help you to understand what's going on and what we're aiming at. Okay. I'd like to thank the 19th Century Charitable Association for inviting me. It was very kind of you, especially to Becky, who has worked for the last hour and a half trying to get all the tech straightened out, and John, Fran French, Susan, and particularly to Lois Starbuck, I think. How many of you know Lois? Yeah, a lot of people do. Lois is one of my very good friends, and she's the one that suggested that I speak here. And to my friends who have suggested a lot of the things that you're going to be hearing about today. Well, there's a lot of myths about lightning. Okay. Here's another one. Okay. I've got probably a couple hundred of these that people have sent me over the years when people still read newspapers. This is my personal favorite. Now, you can see how lightning might work the other way, but not this way. Anyway, okay. So the outline for today, I'm going to tell you a little bit more about how I got involved in this. How does lightning form, lightning from around the world? How does lightning actually injure people, the medical effects, lightning safety, how do lightning rods work, and my work now. Now, it sounds like a lot, but you're going to get little snippets of things, and if anybody's interested, please feel free to email me, and I can give you more information. Okay. So as Susan said, I did my undergraduate and medical school at Michigan State and residency training in emergency medicine in Cincinnati before emergency medicine was accepted as a specialty, which was not until 1981. Yeah, it was actually an outcome of Vietnam because the surgeons that came back from the trauma programs in Vietnam, you were more likely to survive getting your with the tremendous injuries that they had there, than you were to survive an auto accident here in the United States. Because at that time, the ambulances were, what were they? They were hearses from, yeah, is that a little conflict of interest? Okay. And there were no paramedics. There was nobody staffing in the emergency department. Anyway, but that's another lecture. We can do that some other time. Okay. So when I started emergency medicine, there weren't a lot of us around, and so young people like me, straight out of residency, got to do a lot of things. So I helped develop the specialty of emergency medicine by writing some of the original training standards and some of the original accreditation standards that have been changed since then, but okay. By about 1990, Tom Skilling called up, or one of his producers called up and said, we hear you know something about lightning, and Tom wanted to know if, he wants to do a special on lightning, he wanted to know if you might be able to help with that. So from there, I was introduced to some of the people in the National Weather Service who I've been lifelong colleagues with now on writing and researching on lightning. Also in 1990, two other colleagues and I founded the Department of Emergency Medicine at the University of Illinois. I retired from the University of Illinois in 2009, so almost 16 years ago now. In 2011, because I was already known internationally because of my work with lightning and lightning researchers, I was invited to Nepal as a specialist in lightning injuries for an international meeting of developing countries, I guess you'd call them. There I met Richard Shermarari from Uganda. When Richard stood up to give his talk about lightning in his country, which was Uganda, he was almost in tears. He said, I found out that 75 people have been killed in my country within just the last 6 months by lightning. Yeah. And including those kids that I showed you the picture of at the beginning. Okay. So he decided he was going to do something about lightning. He went back to Africa and he organized a couple more of these, the same organization that had funded the Nepal meeting, and had them in Uganda. And from there, it was concluded that there should be a lightning safety programs across Africa. Well, he needed somebody to run it because he actually worked for the government, and that was conflict of interest. So he said, why don't you manage this organization for us? He said, you're retired, you have lots of time. So I talked with my husband, who's down here, kind enough to join me today, Dale Jones. And we talked about it, and I said, okay, I'll give you a year. Well, that was a while ago. And, you know, a founder of any organization like this ends up doing everything for a while until they can recruit help. So anyway, that's where we are. So let's talk about how does lightning form and lightning around the world. Now, one of the things that I'd sent over to be sent out to you for the teaser this morning, the reminder, was this map. And if you click on the map, that's the link. So, and I don't know if the slides will be provided to people so they can get the links later. But if you click on this, it will take you to a map of one of the premier lightning detection companies in the world, Vaisala. And if you put your clicker on the globe, it will rotate for you. And then if you go up to you see the little plus minus up in the top right-hand corner there? Yeah. So if you click on that, then it will keep enlarging it until you get right down there to Lake Michigan. And you can, I don't know if that's too small for you to see, but that says that there's 24 lightning strikes to the ground every year for every square kilometer in that area. Now, you can go all over the world. You can go to Ethiopia and find out how many lightning strikes there are there, okay? So it's just fun. Okay. So how does lightning form? Well, you're from the Midwest. You know what it feels like. You start getting a cold front coming in, and it's a hot and humid day, and the cold front, the heat starts to rise through the cold area. The water condenses, and you start getting clouds, right? And then the clouds keep growing and growing and growing. Well, one of the things is that normally the Earth is negatively charged compared to the sky and the clouds. But as these clouds form, it actually changes and reverses the polarity, okay? What happens is, as you get higher in the atmosphere, it gets colder and colder and colder. So that by the time you get to minus 40 to 50 Fahrenheit, right at about this level, that's where you start getting lightning forming. I'm not going to get into the meteorology of that. It's certainly online, and you can read more about it. I can give you links to that. And I'm not a meteorologist, although I've had to learn a lot. Okay. So let's look at the area down here at the bottom of the cloud. Well, there's a lot of lightning in the cloud, but every once in a while, one of them decides it's time to go explore someplace else and starts off down to the ground. Well, it comes down in about a 50-meter spurt, and then goes back up, then comes down and then splits, goes back up, comes down, splits again. So you can see those splits here. When it gets to be about 30 to 50 meters from the ground, it induces upward streamers in anything that's underneath. So it could be a telephone pole, it could be a radio tower, it could be a person, a cow, a blade of grass, but you get these upward streamers, okay? Finally, one or more of those upward streamers attach to the downward lightning, and it's called attachment. Once that column of hot plasma is formed, then you start getting a lot of return strokes, which can go either direction, but they're most likely to come from the ground up. So you get the return strokes. That's the flickering you see. Okay. There we go. Okay. So this is where the attachment, where the lightning actually came down, but you can see all of these upward leaders or upward streamers around it. I want you to remember upward leaders because that's one of the ways you can be injured. I'll show you that later. Okay, so some of the statistics about lightning, about 80 to 90% of lightning is in the cloud. 10 to 20% is cloud to ground. Single lightning event called a flash is made up of many strokes. All of those pieces of lightning coming down are strokes, okay? Every lightning strike in the United States, there's an average of 1.68 attachment points to the ground. So lightning doesn't just hit one place. It can hit lots of places, okay? This means if you average it out, 3 out of 5 lightning strikes have 2 or more attachment points, and they can be miles apart. Okay. There's both positive and negative lightning. All those branches the pretty branches you see coming down, that's negative lightning because positive lightning doesn't have any branches. It also doesn't have any return strokes. There's a one-time done, and that's positive lightning. Positive lightning tends to have a lot more energy in it. It's a lot less predictable, and it's a lot more likely to cause fires. Okay, let's see if I can get this. This is high-speed video of a negative stroke and negative flash. This technology, which is up to 1 million or 2 million frames per second, if you get a really great camera, this is about 7,000 frames per second. Isn't that cool? It showed us things about lightning we never knew were there. All those extra little stuff coming out is really cool. It really revolutionized lightning research. Now this is what you see when you see a positive lightning stroke. This takes a little while to build up. I see lots of the little lightning going on in the cloud and stuff like that, and that's probably a negative lightning going off that direction. Isn't it pretty? That's your positive lightning. It's lasting longer, it's a lot brighter, it's got a lot more energy, and it's sticking around a long time, okay? Which, if that's in the middle of the forest, can cause forest fires. Okay. Some other myths about lightning. Metal attracts lightning, right? No. Nothing attracts lightning. Nothing. It doesn't matter how much iron is in the ground. It doesn't matter whether there's a lake. It doesn't matter whether the Empire State Building is there. It doesn't matter. Nothing attracts lightning. Now, in science, we try to explain what goes on with any phenomenon, whether it's digestion or of your lunch that we just had or lightning. Statistically, we can describe what lightning does. Lightning is more likely to hit something tall, more likely to hit something isolated, more likely to hit something pointy. But otherwise, nothing attracts lightning. Okay. Cell phones don't attract lightning either, okay? So you can walk around with a cell phone. The only reason the cell phone is dangerous is you're not paying attention to what you're doing and you walk in front of a truck, or you don't hear the thunder and the lightning hits you. That's the only reason cell phones are dangerous. Okay. So lightning doesn't always hit the tallest object, too. Sometimes it makes up its own mind and it goes halfway down the tower or whatever. Another myth is that lightning injuries only occur when it's raining. So if it's not raining, you can wait till it starts raining before you're in danger, right? Nope. Okay. Lightning can hit as far as 10 or 15 miles in front of a thundercloud, as you see this one reaching out. Okay. About 10% of lightning to the ground occurs without any rain at the strike point. Okay. Blue sky is often seen when there's during a lightning storm. You need to pay attention to the thunder and to the lightning, not to the blue sky. By the time you hear thunder, you're already in danger of the next strike. Okay? Because you can only hear thunder about 10 miles away, unless you're in the middle of a city or, on the other side of a mountain or something like that, but in general. And lightning is likely to hit, if you heard that lightning, the next lightning strike is likely to hit somewhere between 5 and 8 miles from the last strike point that you just heard. Okay? That means if you're where you're hearing lightning, you're within certainly 10 miles, maybe closer, so that you could be the next one that gets hit. Okay? Now, this is a question that we have been working with for years, and that's that the metal of the car body, or the tires protect you. If lightning has burned its way a mile or two through the air to get to the car, do you think that much rubber is going to make any difference to it? Or whatever the composite is, okay? So I don't know how well you can see this picture. It seems to get darker every time I try to use it, but there's this guy sitting inside a vehicle here, and maybe any of you can name what kind of vehicle it is. But so it's in a lightning lab, so they generated enough electricity. See that down there? That's where it escaped. Electricity is made of electrons, right? They're all negatively charged. If you've ever tried to push two magnets together, the two positive sides or the two negative sides, they repel each other, right? Well, electrons want to stay as far away as they possibly can from each other because they're repelling each other, okay? So they're going to stay on the outside of that metal, which is why you're safe inside, okay? A metal vehicle. Stays on the outside of the metal shell, works its way around until it eventually gets off the hubcap or a axle or wherever it wants to go off, okay? Another myth is the crispy critter myth. Okay? That's if you get hit by lightning, the only thing that's left is a little pile of dust or ashes, right? In fact, lightning isn't around long enough to cause serious burns. We all know that if you put something in the microwave and before you get it out, you kind of touch it because you know how hot it is and you know whether you're going to have to get some hot pads out to pull it out or whether your fingers can tolerate it for that transfer, okay? So there's a direct relationship between temperature and time in causing burns. Lightning, because of some other factors of physics and things like that too, but lightning just isn't around long enough to cause serious burns. The burns that we see are minor, at least from my standpoint as a physician. They're not going to require grafting. They're not going to require, intensive care unit like some of the massive burns do. In fact, less than a third of our survivors report any skin markings at all, okay? Lightning is a nervous system injury. It's not a burn injury. We'll talk about that. There we go. Okay. Another myth. Okay. This is one of my trials in Uganda. Everybody calls it lightning. Lightning hit me. Okay. No, it's lightning. There's no E. There's only one syllable. But anyway. But I have to confess, I wrote it that way when I asked questions and emails and things of people back when I was younger. I put E's in there sometimes because I didn't know the difference until a friend of mine came up with that cartoon, okay, which I now send to everybody who misspells lightning. Okay, so lightning has a huge amount of energy, right? You saw that 30 to 300,000 amps and big volts and all that kind of stuff. Well, a lot of the energy is actually dissipated in the light, because you can see light from lightning 100, 200 miles away if you're out on the plains. In heat, in sound, more when it hits the ground. And I'll show you by the mechanisms of injury that at least 90 to 95% of the energy in most strikes, not all, but most strikes, don't get to the person, so that the dose of lightning that the person's getting is much smaller than those numbers would have you believe. So we're going to talk about the mechanisms of injury. One of the things I want you to think about is another thing people think with lightning. There must be an entry point, there must be an exit point, and the only damage is in between those two, right? Like with a gunshot wound, okay? But it's not like a gunshot wound. It's more like being sprayed with a fire hose. It's a whole electric field that's coming around, so it's affecting an area, not just a pinpoint. Okay. Well, most people only know about direct strikes, but in reality, direct strikes only cause about 3 to 5% of the deaths. So, a lot of the rules that we tell you about for lightning, they only apply to direct strike. How about all the other ways you can be injured? Well, another is contact injury, where you're touching the plumbing or something that maybe the wiring was hit at a distance from the house and it came in and got you. This is one of the problems we had with landline phones too, is that the landline phone is not connected to the wiring of the house, so it doesn't get grounded out if lightning hits the building. But if you're talking on the phone, guess what happens? Lightning hits and it goes through you and the phone, because you're not connected to the house, where you would otherwise be safe most of the time. Okay. Another is side splash. This is why we tell people not to stand under trees. Another is, remember I told you to remember the upward leader, upward streamer? The citation down there is, I was the first one to report that in the medical literature. Upward streamer. Even if it doesn't connect with the lightning, when the lightning hits a distance, that leader collapses and there's enough energy in it to cause death or injury. Ground current makes up about half of the injuries. It's probably blamed for more than it should be. It's probably more of the upward streamers cause injuries and death. Ground current is when lightning hits a spot. You've got 1 foot closer to that area and 1 foot further away. Well, when lightning hit, the energy dissipates in circles away from where it hit. As you get further away, there's less energy in that circle. So if you've got 1 foot on a closer circle, 1 foot on a further distance, there's a potential difference, and you can get energy going up one leg and down the other with an injury. Okay? Those are all of the electrical areas, ways that you can be injured. But barotrauma, or pressure wave, is another. When lightning comes down, it's you'll hear on the news that it's 5 times the temperature of the surface of the sun. Yeah, sure. But what that does is it heats the air, causes a massive, very rapid expansion, just like being near an explosion. Okay? So it's approximately the same as what a 10 kilogram TNT bomb would cause for barotrauma or pressure trauma. So that can happen with any of those electrical ones, but okay. So this is a summary. You can see that direct strike makes up a very small proportion. We don't know what that barotrauma does to people. These are mechanisms in the developed world. We don't know what they are in the developing world where I'm working now. So what do you expect from a lightning strike? First of all, it doesn't matter what the mechanism is. You're going to take care of the person. If you're a doc like me, you take care of the person. You don't sit there and go, I wonder how they were struck, and because it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You take care of the person that's sitting in front of you. Okay? There are immediate effects and delayed effects. Unfortunately, we have no magical cures at this point, no medications that we can give that stop the cascade of events and medical things that happen once a person is injured. But that does mean that we can tell somebody who's come into the emergency department, we can tell their family, these are some of the things you may need to worry about, a week, 3 weeks, 5 weeks from now. Survivors often have, probably about 70% of survivors have after effects, which can be disabling and permanent. The immediate effects are loss of consciousness, for the majority of people. Coronal paralysis. Coronal is Greek for lightning, okay? And there's a paralysis that happens more often in the legs than the arms. But somebody who's hit wakes up from their unconsciousness, but they can't move. They can't reach over to help their colleague, their friend that was also in the lightning strike. They can't run away, and there's still an active thunderstorm going on, so they're still in danger. Okay. Confusion, amnesia for the event, often for minutes to hours afterwards. Often you get eardrum rupture. This can either be because of the electricity as it's going around the outside of the person, or it can be from the barotrauma. Pain, like I said, the minor burns, and the only cause of death is cardiac arrest at the time of the injury. Now, we may resuscitate the person and put them in the ICU and then pronounce them dead 3 days later, but the proximate cause of death was cardiac arrest at the time of the injury. Unless you're up on a cliff and then you have a seizure and you fall off the cliff or something like that, but otherwise it's cardiac arrest. Okay. Okay. The long-term effects, brain injury, very similar. I can't say I'm glad to know about football post-concussive syndrome because of the people who are injured and who suffer through it. But I am so glad because now I don't have to explain the kind of brain injury that lightning people have. Lightning and electrical injuries, because I do those too. Because you've read enough about it that you know what they're suffering. They're suffering confusion, forgetfulness, often sleep problems, lack of appetite, GI symptoms for weeks to months sometimes, headaches which last for a long time, sensitivity to light and noise, word-finding problems, difficulties with balance, ringing in the ears. Ringing in the ears can be permanent. Later, after the acute period, people get hit by lightning, they say, okay, I'll just lay on the couch for a couple days and it'll go away, right? Like sore muscles from exercise or something. It doesn't. The brain injury continues, and that's when people start seeking care sometimes. Lots of people get hit by lightning and never come to the hospital. But then their spouse or caregiver or daughter or something like that starts noticing that they're having trouble organizing, remembering things, learning new things. They forget to turn the stove off. They don't know they had an appointment. And because of this loss of executive function, many people can't return to their prior work, which means they may lose their mortgage, which means they may lose their house, which means, all those kinds of things that happen when you lose a job. In kids, they can have learning disabilities. And of course, all of this, plus the brain injury and the hyper-irritability and anger, frustration and all that the person themselves suffer, can really lead to problems in the family. Another problem, I said it's a neurological injury, right? It's brain and nerves, okay? Chronic pain is pain that lasts for more than 3 to 6 months. Damaged nerves heal differently than than they were before they were injured. They're more irritable. They get more endings, sensory endings to pick up sensations, and they can make the other nerves around them more irritable. Sometimes, and this is what's called a neuropathy, and many of you have probably heard of that. Neuropathy is where something like just the lightest touch or air going across the skin or putting your hand into the freezer in the refrigerator causes tremendous pain. It's because you've got a lot more nerve endings. Those nerve endings are going, something's irritating me. Oh, that must be pain. And it sends all these pain signals to the brain, and that's what the brain hears, okay? Those things wouldn't have caused pain in you and me, but in a damaged nerve that is healed after a lightning injury or other types of injuries, you can get that kind of overstimulation or misfires or whatever you want to call them. Okay. One of the things that we find is that if people don't get good medical care and care for their pain, sometimes they'll self-medicate with alcohol and other kinds of things. Okay. PTSD is also very common. After all, they meet a lot of the criteria. They were exposed to a traumatic event. They start having trouble with sleeping and flashbacks and all of the things that you've heard that the veterans have. Okay. If you want to know more medical, because I don't have time to cover it all, then you can look up in this book that Ron and I wrote. I think Ron and I got paid $1,100 for writing this book. Okay. And so I figure it's mine to do with what I want. So I posted it all over everywhere so people can download it for free. So you can get it for free off the website. Okay. Well, death can be devastating, but after a death, the family grieves, but then they can sort of move on. They're sort of forced to. But if your daughter, who is getting ready to go to college, is hit by lightning and has a brain injury sufficient that maybe she's in a wheelchair now, maybe she's not able to do the things she was before, you may be caring for that person the rest of your life. That's devastating. Okay. Thankfully, there's a support group, the Lightning Strike and Electric Shock Survivors International, that's been serving families for over 35 years, and that's their website. Again, email me if you need it. Okay. Okay, so how do you prevent lightning injuries? Well, this is the USA experience with a number of deaths starting in 1900 here and progressing through the millennium, okay? The blue line is the number of people who live in the city versus the rural areas. As people moved to the city, they were less exposed. There's fewer farmers now. Farming has become so mechanized. I mean, the cab of one of their combines is nicer than my car, you know. It's got all of these radios and all kinds of, I don't know what's in them. But so with the mechanization, people are inside a metal shell, so they're safe, so they're not exposed, okay? So fewer people getting exposed means fewer people getting injured. We also have much more substantial housing now than we had around 1900. In fact, in 1900, one of the primary causes of death from lightning was the building falling down after it got hit by lightning and you're inside the farmhouse. Don't see that anymore. Okay. Well, we started the lightning safety efforts in the National Weather Service and with NOAA back in 2001. And that was Lightning Safety Awareness Week, which is the last full week of June. But then NOAA, around 2015, decided to reorganize. And so those of us who were on the awareness team formed the National Lightning Safety Council. This is their seal, their website. And we've come up with 3 fairly easy to remember safety slogans. Most people only remember the first one. When thunder roars, go indoors. Okay. Because when you hear thunder, like I explained before, you're already in danger. So take a clue and get to a safe place. No place outside is safe when thunderstorms are in the area. We have people who go up to their fishing camps in Canada and want to know what they can do to decrease their chances of lightning. We're going, you know, you gave up your 5-minute response from EMS, you gave up your fully qualified trauma center and your emergency department. There's not much you can do when you're out in the wilderness with nothing going on. So 30 minutes since thunder roars. You should wait 30 minutes before you go outside after the last thunder, because then you're statistically very unlikely to have another lightning event happen and get you. Okay. So lightning safety plan. This is how you avoid being injured by lightning. Know what the weather forecast is and have a safety plan that everybody is aware of, or at least the adults are aware of. Know where the lightning safe locations are, where you're going to be with your family for a picnic or whatever you're planning. You need to know that most things that have the name shelter in the name, bus shelters, golf shelters, sun shelters, park shelters, they're not safe from lightning. So don't use them. Lightning safe means a substantial building. That means a building like this, or a library, or your home, school. It's the kind of building that has metal going through the walls because the wiring, the plumbing, and the rebar and all that kind of stuff going on in the buildings. So that, remember when I said electrons like to stay as far away from each other as possible? When lightning hits a building, even if it doesn't have formal lightning protection, it's going to search out some of those, and it's going to go over the outside, or those structures that are in the walls around you and not get you. Okay? So lightning safe structures, that and an all-metal vehicle. Again, we talked about why metal vehicles work, okay? So, and you need to plan how long it's going to take everybody to get to that safe structure. If you got a whole soccer team, of girls, you better have a lot of mommy vans parked around the soccer field so you can get the kids, and we've been in that situation before, okay? And again, by the time you hear thunder, you're in danger. Don't be afraid to change your plans. If you had a tornado warning, you wouldn't go for a picnic, would you? Well, most of us wouldn't. Okay. Do the same for lightning and for bad weather, because it's a whole lot easier to change the plans than it is to take care of somebody who's been injured or somebody who's a loved one who's been killed by lightning. Well, this is what's happened with the education that we've done with the Lightning Safety Week. Is we've decreased the injuries from around 60 or 70 in the 1990s, all the way down to less than 20 a year for the last 5 years or so. There were only 12 deaths this year for a population of 340 million people. Now, we're never going to put ourselves out of business because there's always going to be that first lightning, right? Because I'm telling you how to take care of yourself after you've heard thunder, after there's been lightning. Well, there's always going to be the first one that's going to get you. Okay, so we're never going to be able to get down to 0 deaths, but 12 is pretty damn good. Okay, so how do lightning rods work? It's not a lightning rod. Well, it's a lightning rod, and it's basically the old Franklin rod. Benjamin Franklin put these together, and it still works beautifully. Those are called air terminals. In Africa, they're called arresters. We call them lightning rods. That's that right up there, okay? Down conductors, you need to have something that's going to take the energy around the building safely to ground. And that's what a lightning protection system does. It's basically a cage of the lightning rods, the down conductors, and then the either earthing rods that are pounded into the ground, or a ring that's buried around the house, okay? So that's the earthing rods or rings. And then, of course, you want protection for your electronics. So lightning protection systems do not attract lightning. They do not repel lightning. Because some people will tell you, oh, don't put a lightning rod on your house, it'll bring lightning down on your house. No, it doesn't do that. It just safely takes the lightning around the outside of the building, and everybody inside the building is safe. Okay. Now, this is one of the schools that we have protected in Uganda. The gray buildings are the old buildings. Well, they built 4 new buildings, so we decided we'd go back and protect them too. You don't need to look at the details except that this is a view from the top. And you can see everywhere there's a lightning rod here, and you might be able to see these little red things right at the edge. Those are where we put the down conductors, and then we put an earthing ring, buried it down about a yard deep, so it would dissipate, get the electrons to go away from the kids that are inside the building, right? Okay, we want the electrons to go out that way. Okay. But if it goes out from this building and hits this building, well, then that building's injured. So what we do is we interconnect all the rings. Okay, so that makes it safe. But it's a lot more expensive to protect multiple small buildings like this, like we see in Uganda, than it is to take protect a larger building like we're used to having. Okay, so my work now. In my retirement, okay, since we had lightning deaths and injuries under control in the United States, some of my colleagues and I decided to move a lot more of our work international, which we'd been doing already, but we really started paying more attention on it. The closer you get to the equator, the more lightning there is. People in developing nations don't have lightning-safe areas to go to. This is what housing is in sub-Saharan Africa. Okay? There's no metal, there's no indoor plumbing, there's no electricity. So there's none of the things that we count on to protect us in buildings like this. 90% of sub-Saharan Africa is not lightning safe, which means families are at risk 24/7, 365, whether they're walking to market, whether they're taking care of their cattle, whether they're sleeping in their home with their kids. Okay. Now, the exception to not a burn rule is that coronal paralysis, which is one of the reasons I mention it. Coronal paralysis is that temporary paralysis which can keep you from moving. It can keep even healthy people from escaping the building when the thatch above them is burning. This lady lost her whole family when the thatch on the top of the Rondavel in South Africa burned. 11 tribal elders were killed in this fully thatched building when it caught fire. And again, this is one of those things that we've written up for the literature. And somebody said, I didn't know anybody took care of lightning people. Well, it turns out that the government and everybody else doesn't know anything about lightning, so we've had to do all of the basic research and put out all of the information so that then we can convince people there are things you can do to save lives. So we've written the literature. Okay. So ACLANET, let's talk about that. It's actually called the African Centers for Lightning and Electromagnetics Network. Now, most people's eyes glaze over by the time I get to electromagnetics saying this, but it was the name of the organization I got stuck with. Oh, we're changing that. Okay. The mission is to decrease deaths, injuries, and property damage from lightning across Africa. And we've served Uganda and Africa for over 10 years now. Okay. Just so you don't get confused, because if you look at my shirt, you see this logo, right? And on that slide before, you saw the old logo. Well, we're rebranding for the next decade. We're looking at the programs that we want to do over the next decade. We're going to have, the new website should be out soon, the new logo, which changes electromagnetics to education, but still keeps ACLANET, and really says what we want to be doing in Africa. Okay. When we started ACLANET, it's great to start a nonprofit, but what do you do after that? You know, what do you do with it? So we started thinking about what are we going to do for the next couple of years to get a wedge in. And we did the research and we found out that of the news reports we could pull in over a couple of years, it was school. Subsequent research has shown that the children that are crammed together in a classroom, often 50 to 80 in a single classroom in Uganda, are the ones most likely to be injured by lightning in Uganda. Now remember that side flash where you're standing next to a tree? Same thing happens if you're in a metal roofed classroom that's not protected from lightning. Hits that, splatters down onto the kids that are in the building. So I told you about Ronyanya Primary School. One of the things that we've done since then is we founded International Lightning Safety Day, which is June 28th every year and is commemorated around the world by other lightning safety programs and by other safety activists. Okay. The challenges in protecting schools, like I said, there's multiple small buildings. It makes it more expensive to protect. They don't have lightning protection to start with. And there's a lot of charlatans in the lightning protection business that will claim that just putting up one rod, which they charge a lot of money for, will protect the entire school compound. There are standards for lightning protection, international standards. Researchers have gotten together and written these standards, but they're expensive. Only about a third of the world maybe can afford to put lightning protection on buildings the way they specify. And then, of course, there's only about 30 to 35,000 schools in Uganda, so where do we start? Well, we chose schools that had had injuries before. With this map, you can see the places that we've put in lightning protection in these schools. We've done that scattered like that so that we can use them as training centers for other designers, lightning protection people, regional training for the schools on what to do when there's lightning. Okay. Well, lightning injury prevention requires two things. It requires safe places, And we're only scratching the surface in Uganda, but we're making some progress. And the knowledge of what to do when thunderstorms are in the area so that you can decrease your risk. And that's what we're going to be focusing on for the next 10 years, is really spending a lot more time and money educating the kids and the populations than in protecting schools by themselves. In fact, you can see this one. This is Barnabas Akantambra, who's our country coordinator, addressing a bunch of kids at Mulabana School in Kalangala district. It's an island in Lake Victoria. So we've started the education programs. We've hired an education person, and I'll show you his picture in a little while. Okay. We also work with the government. A year ago, I was in Uganda. This is the First Lady of Uganda. In many developing countries, the First Lady is either the head of education or the head of social services and care for mothers and infants or something like that. Well, Mama Museveni, Janet Museveni, is elected member of parliament in her own right, and she's also the Minister of Education. We met with her. That made all the difference in the Ministry of Education. You know, you've been hearing about nonprofits in the United States, right? In USA? Yeah. Well, it turns out that many of the countries that are being served by nonprofits or NGOs, they realize that the NGO is only going to be around for a year or two, so they don't even return their phone calls. You know, they'll have their hand out to get money if they can, if they're in the village, but the government officials won't pay any attention to them. When I said I was meeting with the Department of Labor, or the Ministry of Labor, of Education, Disaster Preparedness, and some other groups, when I would say, I'd show my little slide series and I'd say, we've been serving Uganda for 10 years. You see the people, they kind of sit up differently, look at us differently. These guys have made it, they're keepers. We can work with them now. You know, they proved themselves. And it was amazing, and since then we've had a lot of progress. Okay. One of the other things we do is we collect the news reports of injuries. We have the largest publicly available injury database on lightning injuries in the world at this point. It's on the website. Researchers can use it for free. It gives us the data to be able to go to the government and say, you've had this many deaths and injuries in the last year that have been reported. There's undoubtedly a whole mess more that didn't get reported, but at least we've got some data, okay? Another thing we've done is we investigate mass casualty incidents, like the Runyanya incident that I was talking about. We've done 4 now. 3 of them have been at schools, and 1's been at a refugee camp. And we report those at the international lightning meetings so that, again, we spread the knowledge, we spread the information. Okay. We're actually in work now with Meteorage, which is a French lightning detection company, to test out an early warning system on about 20 of the schools that would be triggered when lightning is within so many miles and would set off an alarm so the kids would know to go inside the building. So we can decrease injuries that way. Some of the other programs, the publications that we have, social media, we send out a lot of stuff on X and Twitter and WhatsApp. We've got a series of webinars. We've set up a national advocacy team of volunteers who want to take lightning information back to the villages where they were born. So we're training them with the webinars. We're also mentoring the lightning safety advocacy programs around the world. SOLNET, the South Asia Lightning Network of 8 different nations. Latin American Lightning Network just got started a couple years ago. They took our bylaws, changed the name, and did, you know, which is fine. Happy to have them do that, and set up their nonprofits using us as a template. And we all talk to each other all the time. We all share slides and stuff like that. Well, our board of directors, we started out with Richard and me. Chandima was one of the original people really pushing this. He organized the meeting in Nepal where Richard and I met. He's from Sri Lanka. Ian Jandrell is from the University of Witwatersrand in South Africa. He has since become a vice chancellor, so he nominated Ken to take over for him. Ken's an electrical engineer, studies lightning. Ron Holly is the National Weather Service colleague I've been working with since 1990. Tony is ex-commissioner of education in Uganda, very well respected. He walks into one of these district education offices and they just all smile to see him. So he's been instrumental in really helping us make inroads. Dyla is a young researcher that's worked with Ron and me. She's up at the University of North Dakota. She's just amazing with the things that she does. So these three have retired from the board for various health reasons and things like that, and a couple of others too along the way. But the board now is made up of these two and these three, except we added 7 more in January. These are so exciting. Babagana Abubakar is from Nigeria. Zainal is a long-term friend. He is the Dean of Engineering at the University of Putra in Malaysia. Gopa Kumar he's probably given more lightning and electrical safety talks than anybody else I know in the world. I mean, thousands and thousands of them. He's in India. Tom is a professional drummer in Tennessee, Nashville. But he fell in love with Uganda and he's backpacked. He's smuggled in lightning protection materials in his suitcase and hiked up the mountains and protected schools and churches. So he's got a good heart. Nicola is actually a lightning strike survivor from South Africa and in graphic design. Walt Lyons is he is past president of the American Meteorological Society and has long been one of our supporters. And Paula is our pro bono accountant and attorney for the last many years. So she's on the board. So it's been really exciting doing the board orientation over the last couple of months, and we've got more orientation to do, but these folks are ready and willing and eager to work. Here's the staff. Barnabas has been with us since 2021. He's the country coordinator. Martin is just like a big old teddy bear. He'll just do anything you want. You know, you ask him for something, he'll get it done, whether it's printing these shirts, and he's always got one of these shirts on. He's the finance manager. Isaac is our chief installer. He's also in school to finish an electrical engineering college degree. He's got the second highest level of electronics certification that Uganda gives. This is Atwin. He's our educator. Jane is communications, press, and media. And Tawfiq has been with us, sorry about the bad pictures, but sometimes that's all they send me. Tawfiq has been with us since he was in high school in 2014 when he came to one of those early meetings. He's still with us as a volunteer and helps advise on some of the IT issues that we have. So what are our results for the last 10 years? Well, we got a great reputation with the schools, the government. We've protected 9 schools, and over that time, with the students who've rotated through the school, over 17,000 students and teachers. The government trusts us and are using begging for our reports on the mass casualty things and some of the other things that we do so that they can use them for Parliament to get more resources to protect the kids. They've required lightning protection systems in all new school buildings and its construction at this point. They actually gave us a driver and a car and the fuel and a staff member to go do the mass casualty investigation in the refugee camp. So they support our grant applications and sign the things saying that, you know, we're working with you and want you to get this grant. And we're now known worldwide in the lightning research community, and the lightning protection community. And the international standards are looking at changing the standards to make them more affordable. So how can you help? All right. Well, fundraising, we can always use money. I mean, this is a nonprofit. We're doing the best we can with a small amount of money. Lois Starbuck has hosted a dinner before where I came and spoke about lightning to many of our friends from our church, actually, and got a lot more supporters and donors. So if you'd like to support a dinner, and it's not like we serve steaks or anything expensive, it was more for getting together. let me know. You can sign up for the newsletter. If you're part of a family foundation, Ludwig and Leuthold Family Foundations together have given us over almost $250,000, okay, between the two of them to protect schools. If you have grant writing skills, please talk to me. Marketing, development of educational materials. We can put together the topics and the information, but to get education grants, we really need to have designs and pre-test and post-test, and I don't have those kind of skills, so please see me. Okay. If you have nonprofit experience, we'd love to have you on some of the working groups, otherwise called committees, but that's a dirty word in the United States, so we call them working groups to sort of get the idea in there. You're supposed to do something, okay? So it's a working group. And you don't have to be a lightning expert to do that. We got plenty of lightning experts. They're not very good at running nonprofits, so we need nonprofit people, okay? And of course, you can always donate. You can go straight to lightning..org, and we'll be happy to take your money. Thank you. And we will put it to very good use. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. That was a wonderful presentation. So, question, you talked about things you can or can't do for prevention. If you're out hiking, and my wife and I had a talk once, learned if you hear thunder, don't go out hiking, but sometimes you're out hiking. Are there any steps you can take other than getting off of the mountain and into a safe place while you're in a period of danger?
My friend Ron Holly says you've already made too many bad decisions by the time you get into a situation like that. But sometimes you do get caught. You know, you think it's going to be okay, and it just isn't. There's really not much you can do. There's what used to be called the lightning crouch, where you get down and make a... that only works for a direct strike, and you already found out that was only 3 to 5% of the deaths. So you're decreasing your injuries by what, maybe 1%? And you think lightning knows whether I'm 5'6" or I'm 3 foot whatever, and I can't even get in that position, okay? So it's better to run like hell and get someplace safe. And we can show that statistically. There's been papers on that, so yeah.
Could you please repeat the information about your book?
Okay, just go to the website. Let's see. Where are we?
What website?
lightning.org. It'll have a donate button right there on the right-hand side. Thank you. That would be great.
That was interesting new information to me about phones being dangerous. And I was wondering, first of all, if cell phones are safe. And secondly, if you have a landline, does it make a difference if it's a corded landline or if it's the kind that operates with batteries that's not directly connected?
It's a corded is the danger because it's coming, the lightning's coming through the wire. Cell phones are only dangerous because you're not paying attention. It's the only reason they're dangerous. They do not attract lightning. If lightning hits you, it may change where it goes, you know, for around your head or something like that, but they're inherently themselves, they are not dangerous.
How do you get most of your funding? And do you have federal grants? And will you be affected by any of the recent cuts?
I have not had the courage to write a USAID grant yet because there's so many, and I guess I'm never going to have to now, so with USAID gone. And that's one of the reasons I'm calling for grant writers is I probably wrote 20 letters of intent around COVID, 2 or 3 years before COVID, and we just don't score. Because if I write an education grant, then they're not concerned about me keeping the kids in school so they graduate. They're concerned on me teaching science in the 5th grade better. That's what the reviewer is going to look for, you know. If I say a community involvement grant, I use that as a keyword for finding the grants, they want to know about safe water, smokeless cooking, you know, and those kinds of things. They don't want to know about my community development grant of protecting the school so the entire village can go to the school when there's a thunderstorm and be safe. So we don't fit most of those areas. So where does our funding come from? About just under 50% has come from the Ludwig and Leuthold family foundations over time. We get, and the rest of it comes from donors. So, yeah. We've been blessed to have some very loyal donors. Small ones that just send $25 2 or 3 times a year, and others who are, can afford to give us more.
Grant writing is very specific and very difficult, and
Yes,
we
it
can
is.
attest to that.
Hi there. This was very interesting. Do you recommend that we all put lightning rods on our houses? And if so, where do you do that? Where do you go?
I can put you in touch with reputable lightning protection system people. We don't have lightning protection on our house because at one point you can actually calculate from the amount of lightning and a bunch of other factors how often you're likely in your little area of your house to actually be hit. I was going to do that once, but I never got around to it. But it's probably maybe once in every 50 to 100 years for us in this area. Maybe a little more, maybe 1 in 25 years. But I haven't actually sat down and calculated it. So it's probably not worth the money to put on. Now, if you're in a very lightning-prone area like Florida, Oklahoma, Texas, along the Gulf, North Carolina, it's a lot cheaper to put lightning protection, design it into the home before you build it than to retrofit it. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
I actually love thunderstorms, and I enjoy watching them. I am bright enough not to do it outside. Am I in any danger standing in front of my window and watching thunderstorms?
We all take risks. Every time you walk down the stairs, you calculate what the risk of turning your ankle is, right? Every time you start to cross the street, you take the risk of, is the truck going to hit me, or, So lightning is a risk that you can feel out as well. I used to sit out on my balcony in Omaha because I could watch the thunderstorms come in my apartment there, watch the thunderstorms come across the plains with my Jack Daniels and ice and not safe, but I'd go in before they got close. Are you in danger? The one thing we tell you is stay away from the metal frame of the window and the door, not because lightning is going to hit it, but because it's going to induce an opposite charge in it, so you may get a static discharge, just like you get when you shuffle across the carpet in the winter. So, yeah. But if it was me, I can't recommend what you do, but if it was me, I do it. That's my dad taught me to love lightning because it was always like the 4th of July. Yeah, it's wonderful.
Well, thank you very much, Mary Ann. That was really interesting.